Hi, and thanks for tuning in to Prep Scholar TV. My name is Josh. I am the head writer for Prep Scholar's online SAT test prep program. You can find that in the description box below. And today, I am going to talk to you about failure. Math is hard for a lot of us. In 2004, the survey company Gallup, they took a survey of over 1,000 high school students. And what they found is 29% of those high school students found math to be their most difficult subject. This was more than physics, this was more than English, this was more than history, this was more than any other high school subject. And if math is hard, then SAT math is harder, because while math as a general concept isn't out to get you, the SAT is out to get you. Yeah, that's because the SAT lays all these little traps that we'll get into further into this video, and it lays these traps just so that students will lose points. Because the SAT is mean, and that's why I'm here. In this video, we're going to go over 3 different types of mistakes that a student might make on test day. We're going to go over some questions from real SAT tests where a student might make these mistakes and lose points. And we're going to go over how you can avoid these mistakes altogether. Let's go. Math is different than other SAT subjects because it requires working through a lot of steps, and each of the steps is going to depend on a previous one. The best way to deal with a lot of steps is to write them out as you go. However, it's going to be tempting to not write down all the steps just because maybe you're afraid of running out of time. So let's see one question from the actual test where that will actually trip you up. So this question is from an official practice test from the College Board website. I'll put a link to that in the description box below. It is from Practice Test 6, Section 4, Question 1. The question asks, which expression is equal to 2x squared minus 4 minus negative 3x squared plus 2x minus 7? So we have some polynomial, and we want to subtract some other polynomial, and then we're given a bunch of answers. So how are we going to solve this? We're just going to do the actual subtraction. Let's first just write out the subtraction here on the right for our own purposes. 2x squared minus 4 minus negative 3x squared plus 2x minus 7. And here, right away, is the step a lot of students skip. When we subtract something that has a lot of terms in parentheses, then we have to make sure that the minus sign distributes to all of the terms inside of the parentheses. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to write out 2x squared minus 4, because that's still the same. And then we're going to do minus negative 3x squared, so that becomes plus 3x squared, minus plus 2x, which becomes just minus 2x, and then minus negative 7, which becomes positive 7. And only now should we combine all the like terms. So 2x squared plus 3x squared is equal to 5x squared. We have only one x term, minus 2x, so we'll put that right here. And then minus 4 plus 7 is equal to plus 3. So this is the answer, and when we look at the answers, that is answer A. Now, Josh, you say, that was only 2 steps. Why would it be more dangerous to just do it in 1 step? It's not skipping that much, right? Well, check out what happens when some students skip that all-important first step and don't distribute the minus sign across the second polynomial. This is what some students are going to do. They're going to do, okay, here's the expression, 2x squared minus 4 minus negative 3x plus 2x, oh, forgot the squared, minus 7. Now this student is anxious and worried about time, or maybe they're a little bit overconfident. And here's what they're going to do. They'll say, okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I'm just going to do this all in 1 step. You know, here's 2x squared. Here's negative 3x squared. So when you combine those, that's going to be 2 minus 3x squared, so it's negative x squared. There's only one x term, so it's plus 2x over here, so it's plus 2x. And then there's minus 4 minus 7, and when you combine those two things, it becomes minus 11. So this is the answer to this student, and that is actually answer C. You see? This student wanted to go really fast, and because they wanted to go really fast, this student said, okay, I'm just going to do this all in one step. And because they did it all in one step, they forgot to distribute the minus sign. And that wouldn't be too bad, right? Except the SAT also gave the answer that that wrong student gave as an answer. They made it answer C. The SAT gave that as a trap. And that is why it's important to always write down all of your steps. It is slower because, you're writing down all of the steps, but it will get you the right answer more often than if you had not written down all of your steps. The sorts of answers that you get when you don't write down all your steps are actually really similar to the sorts of answers that you get when you commit a second mistake, which is called misreading the question. Misreading a question is a pretty understandable mistake. Everybody's misread something at some point in their lives. And on test day, it usually comes from one of two places. The first is lack of focus. Maybe your test day is on a Saturday and it's really early in the morning. And the second one, which I've already talked about, is test anxiety. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through all the questions in time, so I'm just going to read them all really, really fast. And of course, the SAT has ways to trap students who misread questions. Let's look at another real SAT question. It comes from Practice Test 2, Section 4, Question 16. It reads, the table above summarizes the results of 200 law school graduates who took the bar exam. If one of the surveyed graduates who passed the bar exam is chosen at random for an interview, what is the probability that the person chosen did not take the review course? And then we're given a table, has 2 rows, took review course and did not take review course, has 2 columns, passed bar exam, did not pass bar exam. And all of those numbers represent students who fall into those categories. For example, the 18 means that 18 students took the review course and did pass the bar exam. So this is a probability question that relies on us using a table. First, we're going to do it the correct way and get the correct answer. And then we're going to misread the question and see how that leads us to a totally different and totally wrong answer. If we want to find the probability of something, then we should know the probability formula. It's something we should memorize. The probability of something is the number of ways to get what you want divided by the number of things that you're drawing from. In this case, what we're drawing from are the graduates who passed the bar exam, and the people that we want are the people who passed the bar exam who did not take the review course. Now we need to fill this in with numbers from the table. The students who passed and didn't review are going to be found in the passed bar exam column and the did not take review course row. That's going to be 7, so 7 goes on top. And the students who passed, that's going to be all of the students who are in the passed bar exam column. So that's going to be these 18 students and these 7 students. So 18 plus 7, that's 25. So 7 over 25 is the answer, and that is answer B. So that's the correct answer. So this is one of the easier probability questions that you might see on the SAT, but let's see how misreading the question can still get you a totally wrong answer. Let's say that I'm an anxious student and I'm just skimming the question instead of reading it because I want to get through it really, really fast. And because I skim the question, I completely miss this not right over here. It's like this not doesn't even exist. The underline didn't even tip me off. And because I misread it, it still looks like the people that I'm drawing from are the people who passed. But now it looks like the people that I want are people that passed and did review. And because of that, we're going to get a totally different answer. The people who passed, that's still 25 people. That's what we found earlier. But the people who passed and reviewed, that's going to be in the passed column and the took review course row, and that's 18 people. So that's going to give us 18 over 25, which is actually answer A. Because I didn't take the time to read what I needed, the SAT caught me in a trap, and it made me lose points that I should have otherwise gotten. So of course, the takeaway here is to be careful when you're reading. Read every word. In math, in the reading section, I actually suggest that you don't read every word closely. I suggest you do skimming and directed reading instead. But because math questions can be so densely packed with information, I do suggest that you read closely every question. You might have noticed earlier that if we hadn't known the probability formula, then misreading the question or not, we wouldn't have been able to solve the problem. This dovetails right into our next mistake, which I'm going to call not knowing formulas. This mistake is a little different. It's not a mistake that happens on the day of the test. It's a mistake that happens during the preparation that you do for the test. First, let's look at a formula sheet that the SAT gives you at the beginning of every math section. It is mostly geometry formulas. It has, the area of a circle and its circumference in the top left. It has some 3D shapes as well. Volume equals length times width times height for a rectangular prism in the bottom left. It has some special right triangle side relationships in the top right. And it also has just some useful facts. The number of degrees of arc in a circle is 360 degrees, for example, which is also a grammatical error. College board. Some students are going to think that these formulas are all that you need on the test. But if those students were right, I wouldn't be making this 15-minute video. As an example, let's look at a formula that not a lot of students know, but which you will need in order to, say, get a perfect score on the math section. This one is a trig formula. It's kind of two formulas, and it goes like this. For any angle, theta, sine of theta is equal to cosine of 90 degrees minus theta, and cosine of theta is equal to sine of 90 degrees minus theta. So they're basically the same formula. You just switch the sine and the cosine and you get the other formula. Now, if you're anything like me, you find trig formulas and trig identities difficult to remember just because, trig is tricky. But let's look at the sort of questions that we can answer if we just take the time to memorize just these relatively short formulas. The following question isn't from a practice test. It's actually from the October 2017 SAT test. And it goes like this. If sine of x degrees is equal to a, which of the following must be true for all values of x? And then we get a bunch of answers that could all be formulas that are true. Now, if we don't know the formulas that we just talked about, there's no good reason why we should think that any of these things are true. It's really difficult to think in terms of trigonometry. But because we know the formulas we just talked about, we can actually solve this question really quickly. We know that sine of x degrees is equal to a. But we also know from the previous formula that sine of x degrees is equal to the cosine of 90 degrees minus those x degrees. Therefore, cosine of 90 degrees minus x degrees is also equal to a, which means that C is the answer. This is a one-step problem. It can take 10 seconds if you just know the formula. But if we hadn't known the formula, we would have only had really two options. The first is to spend a really long time trying to derive the formula ourselves or try to logic through it. It can be done, but it'll take a really, really long time, and time is not something you have a lot of when you're taking the test. And the second thing you could have done is lost points, and I do not suggest that you do that. So we just went over 3 different ways to make mistakes on the SAT math section, but what do these mistakes all have in common? Carelessness. Be careful enough to write down all of your steps. Be careful enough to be sure you're reading something correctly. Be careful enough to know every single formula that you need to know for the test. And the first 2 mistakes especially are born out of anxiety and nervousness. And that causes students to go too fast and skip steps and misread words. But remember, if you go too slow, you'll probably lose points because you won't get to every question. But if you go too fast, you're also going to lose points because of all the things we just talked about. There has to be a balance. Now, if you want more practice and you want a personalized study plan just for you, I highly suggest you check out Prep Scholar's online SAT course. There is a link to your free trial below. Also below is a link to the Prep Scholar blog, which has over 1,000 articles on the SAT written by Harvard graduates, perfect SAT scores, all the best nerds that I know. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can see more video content like this. Again, I'm Josh, and I'll see you on the next episode of Prep Scholar TV. Bye. Please forgive my bad handwriting. It's going to be in every video.